Okay.
Hi, host Eric here, talking with French people. Here with host Zachary, and we are walking and woeing about socialism, communism, negative rights, individual rights, and so forth. He just
Big
watched a
Daddy
video.
Marks.
He just watched a video and is responding to it. All right, go ahead.
Mm. Okay, so one of the examples you used for why communism was bad was that even though the state owned or had claim over like the ultimate property they were in, it was still wrong for them to take the wheat from like the farmers and stuff when they spent all their hard-earned labor, or all their they worked so hard to manifest this labor, and the state comes and takes it and says, well, we'll redistribute it to you properly, right? And then that led to like mass starvation and all that shit, and that everyone knows, how that went down with the Soviet era. But the argument of that, it seems like you could totally use that as an argument against like private corporations as well. Because in essence, the individual is going to be making, or at least manifesting, more labor than they need personally for themselves, but the business owner or the one with means of production is still going to take that. It seems like in essence it's the same thing as the states have a means of production. So that argument alone, I think, is more. I don't like that argument for communism specifically.
Well, I think there's the issue of consent, right? So I agree with you that in an ideal world, we wouldn't have the current kind of employer-employee relationship where employers on some level are saying, you do a bunch of labor, I'll, I'll pay you for most of what that labor is worth and keep some of it as profit. And the difference between what I'm paying you and what I'm keeping is going to be contingent on a lot of different factors, but it's going to vary in terms of the extent to which you are earning what you ought to be earning for the amount of work you're doing and the amount of value you're bringing, right? It's a complicated equation. How much of the value of somebody in my on my school is the value accrued by the coach working with the person, and how much of it is the value of the fact that I already have that client, and that getting the client is kind of the hard part, right? So it's a complicated equation because they're not really that simple. But I mean, I'm in favor of models that diminish the amount of employee-ness in general. So I'm with you there in principle, but I also recognize that when somebody
I
goes
just
and
want
gets
to
a
clarify. I don't necessarily agree with like this the syndicalist view of that. I was just kind of like making the. I was making a point that the argument you used there sounds similar to what an argument of like one of my friends who's an anarcho-syndicalist would use against like private corporations.
except it's consensual. You go apply for a job there. They're not saying, "Oh, you're a part of a social contract with us where you have to work for us," and you go, "Well, but I didn't sign any contract with you," and they go, "Oh, well, it's implied." That's how it is with government, right? You actually do have to go and apply for a job there. That's the difference. You're not locked into be working for that one company. You can change employers. You don't have to be an employee. You can pursue entrepreneurship. There are lots of options available to you. The problem with the government system is it doesn't give you those options, really. You have no choice but to participate. I should have peed before we started this, but I really have to pee right now. So,
Okay.
can you extrapolate on your thoughts about this while I pee?
Okay. Um.
I'm not extrapolate, you know what I mean. Expand.
uh. I'm not really sure what my thoughts on it are. I mean, I've heard in the past that Eric is really against he's against like workers unions and things like that. But I think if you and this could be a bad argument because I can't cite specific examples, but I believe that before there were things like workers unions and things like that, workers were treated pretty damn badly by the ones with capital. I could be wrong about that, but I need to do more research and see. But when he gets back, I want to ask him about. He said that it's voluntary, but is it really voluntary? Do we really have a choice to not participate in the? I mean, it seems like his solution is, everyone should just be an entrepreneur, but I don't like that solution. I don't think that everyone should be required to engage in entrepreneurship just to have a life where they aren't exploited. Man, I'm really sounding like a fucking Marxist right now, but it'll be fun to get to Eric's response. It is undeniable, though, that I think the capitalism has definitely raised the living standards in a material realm. But yeah. Welcome back.
Thank you. How many important things did you say?
Not really. I just gave some of my thoughts on well, I was saying I was making one, or I said that you know, or I guess I was just thinking about if we really do have a choice, is it really voluntary to participate in like a capitalist society? And then then I said that it seems like the solution that Eric's proposing is something like entrepreneurship from everyone, but I don't know if I want to live in a society where you have to be an entrepreneur just to not be exploited by a higher power. And then it occurred to me that, goddamn, I sound a lot like a Marxist right now, and, and that was just pretty much it. But yeah, I don't know. When it comes to economic policy, I really am undecided. It obviously occurs to me that a capitalist system has definitely raised the standards of living in a materialist sense. Um, and I just feel like regardless of the system, there's always going to be some sort of caste or some sort of class-based system, regardless of what you employ, unless you want to enforce something like a true collectivism, which pretty much just destroys the identity of everyone within the society. So, I mean, I think there are other things to take into account aside from, when it comes to redistribution. I don't think everyone in society should be equal. I think it's fundamentally unnatural, and it would discourage competition, and it would discourage people to actualize their own skills and abilities within the world if it was just some sort of strong collectivism.
Yeah, I think the problem in the thinking there is that we overweight economic equality and underweight other kinds of equality. So
Yeah.
we forget that the issue of equality is the issue of a myriad set of different equalities. Well, you're better looking than I am. Well, but that person's smarter than I am. But that person's more socially graceful than I am. But that person's richer than I am. But that person has more status accomplishment symbols than I have. But that person is more in tune with their feelings than I am. But that person is more successful in performing acting than I am. But that person's a better ballet dancer than I am. I mean, I can talk about inequalities in every possible field. But people seem to think that economic inequality should be treated differently because it involves an overall standard of living and standard of life kind of issue. But my perspective is when we try to treat it differently, we end up making it worse because we have a situation where we're trying to make sure that old people have money to live on, right? So we have Social Security. That's the original justification for it. Now we've got a situation where we've got the government taking 33% out of everybody's check, presumably to take care of them when they're old, without anybody saying, well, but hey, if everyone's check was 33% bigger, wouldn't we be able to take care of our old people ourselves?
Yeah, but doesn't that imply that people would give a shit enough to? I mean, then you could say that okay, an old person would require their family or a charity to take care of them. But I mean, is that something that's really available to our older generations? I mean, is before Social Security, didn't we have a lot of old people living in just very, very bad living standards? And plus, I mean, I guess you could make an argument that like they probably spent their capital wrongly, but
Well, look, I'm not in favor of seeing people who are in desperate need thrown out into the street. Nobody's in favor of that, right? What I'm saying is,
I think it depends on the person.
okay, maybe some people are in favor of it. I don't know. But my point, I guess, is simply that the government is trying to replace the family as a center of moral agency. I don't think that that's a good idea. It's trying to replace the community as a center of group agency. I don't think that's a good idea. I mean, is it first and foremost the family's responsibility to take care of their own? Yeah, it is. It should be. If the family fails to do that, is it then the local community's responsibility? Yeah, it should be. To the extent that any additional responsibility exists, if we allow local communities, to have both the burden and the benefit of autonomy, if we reduce tax burdens in general, and like for example, if I want to engage in charity, there's 33% of my income that's already been committed for me to engage in charity primarily. I know I'm going to get substantially less back than I put into the system, and you're going to get nothing back. So that's as the system stands in the existing status quo, how it's supposed to play out is that you guys are just fucked. You pay into it and you don't get anything back. It runs out of money in 2036 or something like that. So it's like 20 years from now. I'll be getting, at that point, all payments in will only be for the purpose of paying out existing claims. There'll be no more surplus monies being paid into a big pool that then gets paid back to you. It'll all be paying out to the existing old people. And you'll get nothing out of all the money you paid into it at the end.
Yes, when you put it that way, it sounds pretty fucked up. I think that I think that there needs to be, if we're going to live in a capitalist system, there needs to be more encouragement, like you said, with businesses or money management, economic management in general. Uh, I don't think that, or it's like these people who they take out a lot of the Bernie Sanders crowd. It's like people who are like super deep in student loan debt because they took out a big student loan to get a degree in like gender studies or some shit, and then they want everyone else to step it up and pay it back. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, that's just a horrible. There needs to be more education regarding. If you go to college, it should always be something in like an applied science or some sort of skill. That is necessary to paying off how fucking expensive it is for people to go to college. Like, if you go to college and get like an art degree, you're probably going to be fucked paying that student loan debt.
Yeah, I agree with you in principle, but I will say this: gender studies degrees are particularly useful because there are lots of corporations that want to hire people to tell them how the way they're
I guess.
doing things is kind of sexist.
Yeah. I guess there is like, but there really are positions like that you could get, or just like, I mean, could you imagine our generation's going to have a bunch of the coming generations are going to have a bunch of school counselors with gender study degrees telling young
Right.
boys that they're being too aggressive and that their competition is very damaging towards our sphere, and they should really just be more like the girls.
Or you'll have your corporate feminists whose job it is to be a feminist and to say what my corporation's doing is okay according to feminism. So you go like,
Hmm.
so they become these sort of, they get their gender studies degree and then immediately work to dismantle the whole purpose of the thing by fucking um, like giving the go ahead to a bunch of sex. Oh no, this isn't actually sexist because of this reason. Like excusing them for their ads showing a chick like all bent over and scantily clad and everything. Oh no, it's not
Yeah.
misogynist. I'm the corporate feminist. I should know. I have my gender studies degree. When gender studies degrees become valuable, that's why they'll be valuable. It's because corporations will use those people to excuse their own behavior.
Yeah, I think like the whole push for feminism, like equality on a social scale, this is the type of ideology that's led to like when I was in school playing sports, and it's like no matter who wins, everyone gets the same trophy, like in sports and shit. And it's just like that's fucking stupid. Like that's so dumb. That discourages any type of true transcendence in a realm where it requires competitive energy and people to try their hardest. It just seems so unhealthy to me to pathologize that. And regarding like to kind of bring back when we had our last disagreement over like the non-aggression principle stuff like that. I think that or what it I reflected a bunch afterwards, and it made me realize that the kind of like I think my ideal society would have an organic state, but what that means is like not an organic state would be different from what state means in our traditional modern sense, you know. Um, like if you look at something like Rome, way back in the day, when it's like their entire system, their political leaders, everyone in the society wanted to be a political leader. Everyone, even from like the time they were born, kids were put into the military. They were given like they saw these like people who led their society, and the only way you could hold political office is if you had something called like virtus, which was basically like it was like broken up to several parts of like there was like temperaments, justice, courage, prudence. Like these are things that like virtue was only virtue as like a concept was only reserved for like the higher class, which were like people who had like self-restriction, who had like super good standing in the community, super good standing in the military. The state didn't exist in a literal sense. It existed in an organic sense where everyone in the society was striving for a higher ideal. And now, in our current modern state, state doesn't, it no longer means that. State now means a group of individuals who possess political power who want to manage the lives of everyone within the society according to abstract principles.
Well,
And
they want to socially engineer. At least the left
yeah,
does. And what the right generally does too. That I think would be a better description of what they want to do.
yeah, the right doesn't conserve shit. You know, it's like conservatives, like what the fuck do they conserve nowadays? Like it's just it's just fucked up. And I think that although I don't know if I necessarily agree with everything with the non-aggression principle, I definitely agree that if I'm going to live in a society that has a government, it definitely shouldn't be involved in looking at like taking an extra measures to read my fucking emails, to look at
Right.
what I'm looking up online. And it's like, okay, in the early 1900s, I mean, if someone opened up your mail, like if someone went into your mailbox and opened up one of your letters that you got and read it, like that's like death-worthy shit right there. Like you can't do that. But
Right.
now in our modern age, like the government is allowed to do shit like that, and that's completely ridiculous to me. It's straight it's injustice.
Sorry, my one remaining guinea pig knocked over his water bottle. I had to put it back up again.
Wait, your guinea pig?
Yeah, my one remaining guinea pig. Compton killed all
Wait,
the other
a
ones.
literal a
Yeah,
literal guinea pig?
yeah, a guinea pig. Yeah, I got guinea pigs. Used to have a bunch of them, and then fucking this murdering dog murdered a bunch of them.
That's crazy. I used to have one of the dogs I have. Well, my brother used to have this dog. It was like a pit bull, like full grown, like full blood pit bull, and it was pregnant when he got it. I don't know where he found it or how he got it. I don't know, but he brought it home, and it was pregnant, and it had all of its puppies, and it was out, and we had it in this like caged-in area where it can move around and whatnot, and had all the puppies, and it had it inside its like home and whatnot. And over the course of like a couple weeks, we'd go out there and feed it, and we'd notice that some of the puppies were gone. We didn't know what were happening to them. Like they couldn't get out or anything. And it's like where would they even go if they could? It turned out the fucking mother was eating the puppies, was fucking devouring them. And
That's
we
fucking
ended up
awful.
I know, yeah. One of them was left alive by the time we called the vet and we were like asking. We were just like, "Is there something that could be like?" We didn't really know what was going on, and they said, "Yeah, that's a thing that can legitimately happen where the mother will just if they think the babies are sick, they'll just fucking devour them." But the puppies seemed fine to us, like, and we even kept one of them. By the time we found out, we kept one of the puppies, and now it's like full grown, and it's the only dog that we have at my mother's house. But yeah, it was fucking devouring all of them. It was ridiculous. Like,
That's awful.
I didn't even know that was a thing. Like bones and everything. Like, what the fuck?
They're like soft shell crabs to the mother.
I mean, I can understand though. That mother was fucking huge. Like, I tried to walk her once, and I was like, I don't know, 11 years old, and I couldn't. She walked me. Like, I just could not fucking like control that animal.
Um, cool. So, do we want to draw this video to a close? Do we want to put up a bat signal, or what do you think? You're not quite
Yeah,
in the
that
mood?
works. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let's do
No,
it.
I'm. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for watching Talking of Famous People.